Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're an owner-operator, or really any trucker out there right now, it feels like you're driving through, well, a perfect storm.
That's putting it mildly. You've got regulatory stuff, economic pressures, huge corporate moves. It's a lot.
Exactly. It's not just the day-to-day, like making your deadlines.
Yeah.
You're constantly dealing with this intense pressure from changing state laws, maybe new tariffs, jacking up equipment costs.
And don't forget the big players, the mega core trying to control the whole logistics chain, right? From
Yep.
top to bottom.
Yeah, it's all converging. And that central theme we saw across the sources we looked at, it's uncertainty, just constant uncertainty.
Definitely. Every new rule, every court decision, these potential tariffs,
Mm.
they almost all seem to be making it harder, raising the bar for the independent operator.
The rules of the road, literally in the business rules, are just shifting under your wheels constantly.
Mm-hmm.
So our goal today, our mission for this deep dive, is to unpack these complex stories. We're looking at California, Washington, everywhere in between.
And critically, connect it back. How does this stuff actually impact your freedom to operate, and maybe most importantly, your paycheck, your bottom line?
Right. And we want to try and see these issues from all sides. Like Hervey over at Life as a Trucker often talks about understanding the different angles.
Yeah, see the whole...
And then figure out, okay, what are the concrete strategies you can actually use right now? How do you get that financial respect, that operational support you need?
Because the urgency is real, we absolutely need to identify these threats. Yeah, but we have to spend just as much energy on the solutions. What can you do?
What are the actionable steps?
Exactly. The end game here, looking at what the sources suggest, is making sure you can protect that long-term independence. You want to retire on your terms.
Not because some regulation or some corporate giant basically forced you out.
Precisely.
Okay, let's tackle that massive legal hurdle first. California's AB 5 law. It's survived another attempt to overturn it, right?
Yeah, that's the latest. The courts basically said, nope, AB 5 stands, it's here to stay.
Which just cements the pressure on owner-operators,
Yeah.
particularly those based in California.
Absolutely. And it's maybe worth quickly recapping how it works because it's built on this thing called the ABC test.
Right, the ABC test. Explain that a bit.
Okay, so simplified, it says if a driver is doing work that's considered core to the business of the company hiring them.
Which for trucking means hauling freight, obviously.
Right. If you're doing that core work, the law says you must be classified as a W-2 employee, not a 1099 independent contractor.
Okay, so for maybe someone listening who's just focused on getting the miles in, let's be super clear on that W-2 versus 1099 thing.
Sure. W-2 employee means, the company handles your payroll taxes, you often get benefits, certain legal protections, you're an employee.
Standard job setup.
Yeah. 1099 contractor, that's you as an independent business owner, you handle your own taxes, your own insurance, benefits, all that stuff. But you also have the freedom, theoretically, to choose your loads, negotiate rates.
You're your own boss.
Exactly. And AB 5, well, it makes that traditional independent 1099 owner-operator model really, really difficult, maybe even illegal for many truckers working within California. It effectively kills the classic lease-on arrangement there.
And this is where things get really divided, isn't it? The supporters versus the critics.
Oh, yeah. Supporters will tell you this law is crucial. It protects workers from being exploited, companies misclassifying them as 1099 just to avoid paying for benefits or offering job security.
Okay, that's one side.
But the critics, and that's, let's be honest, most of the independent trucking world, they see it completely differently.
How so?
They call it a bureaucratic bulldozer. They say it crushes small businesses, slams the door on being an entrepreneur in trucking.
And who benefits then in their view?
Ironically, they argue it's the mega fleets. The big guys. They can afford to switch everyone to W-2, absorb those costs, and they end up grabbing the market share from the smaller independents who are forced out or can't comply.
So, okay, you're an owner-operator based in California.
Yeah.
AB 5 is solid law now. What are your actual options? The sources point to a few paths, none easy.
Right. Option 1. Physically move your business, your base of operations, out of California entirely. Drastic, but some are doing it.
Okay, what else?
Option 2. Try to restructure. Form an LLC or an S-Corp, hoping you fit into this sort of murky business-to-business exemption in the law.
But that's uncertain.
Very uncertain. The ABC test might still apply, depending on the specifics. It's not a guaranteed workaround.
In the third option.
Bite the bullet and get your own operating authority. Become your own motor carrier.
Which sounds like a massive step up.
It is. Huge startup costs, way higher insurance requirements, mountains of red tape and compliance. It fundamentally changes how you have to run your business just to stay legal in that state.
Wow. Okay, so that's the classification squeeze.
Yeah.
But the regulatory pressure isn't just who you are, it's also how you operate, right? The compliance oversight.
Exactly, which leads us to this new CDL enforcement beta test happening right now.
Where's that?
In California's Central Valley, basically the stretch from Fresno up to Modesto.
And what's involved in this beta test? Why should drivers outside that area even care?
They should care because this is very likely a preview, a stress test for what could roll out nationwide. We're talking potentially by 2026.
Okay, so what are they testing?
It includes real-time license monitoring, so systems that can instantly flag an expired medical card, suspension, anything like that.
Okay, that makes some sense for safety.
Sure, but then there are the more aggressive audits. They're using ELD data, your electronic logging device data, to scrutinize carriers, looking deep into driving hours, vehicle movements, drug test compliance records.
So using the tech that tracks drivers to enforce rules more strictly.
Pretty much. And for new CDL applicants in that test zone, way more red tape. Fingerprinting, verifying residency. It's getting tougher to even get started.
You mentioned the feds claim it's about standardization, preventing fraud.
That's the official line, yeah. Standardizing things across states. But the immediate impact for drivers, especially those working for smaller fleets, it feels like zero tolerance.
How so?
Well, if you're with a smaller, maybe mom-and-pop carrier that doesn't have sophisticated compliance departments, and they get flagged in an audit triggered by this system, the risk to your CDL, your livelihood, goes way up.
So even if you're doing everything right, your carrier's issues could impact you more directly.
Potentially, yes. The interconnectedness through data makes everyone more vulnerable to aggressive enforcement.
So the takeaway for listeners everywhere, even if this isn't in your state yet,
Double-check everything. Your medical card dates, make sure they're current. Your ELD logs, they need to be flawless. It's not just good practice anymore. It's like essential business defense. Critical.
okay, so we've got the regulatory hurdles making things more complex, sometimes more stressful. Yeah. But let's talk about just the raw cost, the cash hit. Equipment costs are a huge piece of this.
Absolutely. And there's a big one potentially looming. These proposed 25% tariffs on imported medium and heavy-duty trucks.
Class 4 through 8.
That's right. And the deadline they're talking about is possibly November 1st.
25%. That sounds significant.
It is. One source called it a potential financial shockwave. And this impacts major brands, trucks lots of owner-operators rely on, includes popular Volvo models, Freightliner models built with imported components or chassis.
Okay, so the tariff hits the manufacturer first.
Yeah.
But they're not just going to absorb a 25% cost increase, are they?
Highly unlikely, no. The expectation is they pass that cost directly on to the buyer.
So break that down. What does that mean for the owner-operator trying to buy a new rig or a small fleet needing to upgrade?
It means straight up, your truck costs could jump 10 to 20%, maybe more, almost overnight.
Wow.
Which translates directly into much higher monthly loan payments. That eats right into your operating margin, makes it harder to turn a profit.
And is the market already reacting to this possibility?
Oh, absolutely. We're seeing reports that the big fleets, the mega carriers, are already on massive buying sprees, trying to lock in their truck orders before that potential November 1st deadline.
So they're buying up inventory now.
Exactly, which drains dealer lots. And what happens when supply goes down and demand stays high or even increases because of this deadline pressure?
To go up.
Prices go up for both new trucks because they're scarce, and then it pushes up prices for used trucks too because more people are forced into that market. It's this inflationary cycle kicked off by a potential government action.
Man, it just keeps adding layers of cost. Now, speaking of equipment cost, there's also the environmental mandate side of things, particularly out of California again with CARB.
Right, the California Air Resources Board.
They recently amended some of their big zero-emission fleet rules, the ACF rules. Did the trucking industry actually score a win here? Did they force a big rollback?
Not really a rollback, more like a targeted pause or some added flexibility for certain groups.
Okay, explain that. What was the original goal?
The original Advanced Clean Fleets, or ACF, mandate had this aggressive schedule, basically pushing both private and public fleets towards having 100% ZEVs, zero-emission vehicles, think electric or hydrogen by 2045, with milestones along the way.
And the amendments. What changed?
The changes came mostly because public fleets were really struggling to meet the early deadlines. Think about specialized stuff like fire engines, garbage trucks, utility boom
Yeah,
trucks.
not things you see electric versions of readily available.
Exactly. There just weren't enough commercially viable ZEV options in those heavy specialized classes. Plus, the infrastructure, the charging, the funding, it wasn't there for these public agencies.
So CARB had to give them some breathing room. Delays, exemption.
Yeah, more flexibility. Temporary use of renewable diesel as a bridge fuel in some cases, adjusted deadlines. It mainly helps the government and utility fleets avoid immediate noncompliance.
Okay, here's the key question then. What does this mean for the private trucking company, the owner-operator listening right now? Do they get a break too?
Largely, no. That's the crucial distinction here. If you're a private fleet hauling regular freight, doing logistics, you are generally still on the hook for that original, quite aggressive ZEV conversion schedule.
So the mandate itself didn't go away for most truckers.
Correct. But there is maybe a sliver of something positive here. This does show that when an industry sector, in this case public fleets, pushes back with real-world data showing targets are impractical or impossible,
The agencies can be forced to adjust.
they can be forced to adjust unrealistic timelines, yes. It proves that providing that feedback, that pressure, can work. But make no mistake, the long-term mandate for ZEVs and the very real possibility it spreads beyond California, that remains a massive factor and a major cost concern for anyone planning future truck purchases.
Okay, so we've got the regulatory vice tightening with rules like AB5 and stricter CDL checks. We've got equipment costs potentially spiking from tariffs and definitely rising long-term due to green mandates. Let's talk about the third pressure point, corporate power.
Yeah, the fight for control over the freight itself.
And a pretty stark example of this seems to be this lawsuit we saw involving Walmart. A $2 million lawsuit filed against them by a freight broker, Barton Endeavors LLC. What's the story there?
Well, Barton, who's based in Texas, they're claiming that Walmart, after launching its own in-house freight brokerage.
So Walmart started competing with its own vendors.
Essentially, yes. Barton alleges that once Walmart got its own brokerage running, they started systematically squeezing Barton and likely other third-party logistics providers or 3PLs that they had previously partnered with.
Squeezing them how?
Barton claims Walmart started limiting the number of loads they offered them, intentionally delayed payments for work already done.
Ouch. Delaying payments hurts cash flow bad.
Big time. And crucially, Barton alleges Walmart was deliberately undercutting their bids on freight, using their market power to basically push Barton out of the lanes they used to service for Walmart.
So the claim is Walmart used them to learn the business, then tried to cut them out.
That's the core of the argument. Barton says they were forced to lay off employees, significantly cut back their operations because Walmart, their supposed partner, was actively working to undermine their business.
That's a scary scenario for any smaller logistics company or even an owner-operator who might rely heavily on loads from one giant shipper.
It absolutely is. And this lawsuit, regardless of its final outcome, serves as a really loud warning flare for the industry.
How does it connect to a bigger picture?
It plugs right into this major trend we're seeing with companies like Amazon and now Walmart aiming for what's called vertical control.
Vertical control.
Yeah, they want to own or directly control everything in the supply chain. The manufacturing or sourcing of goods, the warehousing, the customer data, the final delivery, and critically, the transportation piece, the freight brokerage, the dispatch.
Why do they want that?
Control, efficiency from their perspective, and ultimately capturing more of the profit margin by cutting out intermediaries.
Intermediaries like independent brokers and logistics firms.
Right. Exactly. And when they squeeze out those independent brokers and 3PLs, who does that ultimately impact down the line?
The owner-operators and small fleets who get their loads from those brokers.
Precisely. It reduces options, increases reliance on potentially predatory pricing from the giant in-house brokerages. The warning is crystal clear. Diversify your customer base. Don't put all your eggs in one giant corporate basket.
Okay, so let's tie these threads together for a second. We've got legal classification issues like AB5 making it harder to be independent. We've got equipment costs going up significantly due to tariffs, CARB mandates, market reactions.
Yeah, it's harder to afford the tools of the trade.
And now we see evidence of corporate giants actively competing against, maybe even trying to eliminate, their own vendors and service providers.
It feels like getting hit from 3 different directions at once, doesn't it? Regulatory, cost, and competition.
It really does. It feels like drivers are just constantly playing defense.
They are. They're defending against these powerful forces. And that brings us to, I think, The most critical point that came up, especially echoing that perspective from resources like Life as a Trucker.
Which is?
The realization that true independence, real security in this industry today, it's maybe no longer just about what happens behind the wheel or even just owning your truck.
Okay, so what is it about then?
It's about building a financial shield. The primary solution being advocated is income diversification.
Ah, so not having all your income tied solely to freight rates and miles driven.
Exactly. It's about being proactive, using your time wisely, not just managing time for shippers, but managing time for yourself, for your own long-term financial health.
Using that off-duty time strategically.
Precisely. If your entire future hangs on the price of diesel next week, or how the next court case on AB5 turns out, you're living with constant instability. There's no control there.
So the goal is building something else.
The goal is to empower drivers, as the sources suggest, to get out on their terms, to retire when they choose, not when the industry forces them out.
And how do you do that? Practically.
It involves learning new skills, leveraging modern tools, things like AI are mentioned, to create other income streams, often online income, that can be recurring.
So building businesses or income sources outside of just driving.
Yes. There are resources out there. Retirefromtrucking.com was mentioned as one example, specifically aimed at teaching drivers how to build these additional streams. The idea is to make sure your success, your financial stability, isn't completely dependent on the next regulatory whiplash or the contract terms from one single carrier.
So redefining independence, it's not just owning the truck anymore.
It's about owning the in-pay streams that protect the whole operation, the whole livelihood, from all this chaos we've just spent time talking about. It's about resilience. Hashtag tag outro.
All right, let's bring this home. If there's one key takeaway from this deep dive, it seems pretty clear, right?
Yeah, I think so.
To really feel respected, to feel supported, maybe even just to survive and thrive long term, drivers need to shift. Shift from being purely reactive to all these pressures.
To actively taking control of their financial destiny.
Yeah, that idea of independence, it's gotten bigger. It's expanded beyond just having the keys to your own rig.
It really has. Because the road ahead, let's face it, it's foggy. It's uncertain. You've got regulators in California and potentially elsewhere. You've got D.C. You've got these massive corporations. They are constantly changing the rules of the game.
Raising the barriers to entry.
Absolutely. Higher truck prices, stricter CDL oversight, making compliance harder, direct competition from giants like Walmart.
Yeah.
It's all pushing in one direction.
Making it tougher for the little guy.
Which means financial resilience, that ability to weather these storms because you aren't solely reliant on one thing. That's maybe the only constant you can actually build and control yourself.
You can't just wait around hoping the next court decision goes your way or that a tariff deadline gets pushed back.
No, you can't let external forces completely define your success or failure. You have to build your own buffers.
Okay, so here's the final thought, the provocative question we want to leave you with to chew on. If compliance keeps getting tougher and more expensive, right? CDL audits, CARB rules. If competition from the Walmarts and Amazons of the world keeps intensifying. And if just buying and maintaining a truck keeps getting significantly more costly.
Yeah.
Will the truly successful owner-operator of the future be defined less by the number of miles they drive and more by their skill in generating and managing reliable income streams off the road?
That's a powerful question. Shifting the definition of success in trucking itself, something definitely worth thinking about.
Food for thought. Explore that one on your own time.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
We'll catch you next time.